Marcus stood in front of the mirror, straightening the collar of his modest blue shirt. No designer label, no fancy cufflinks, just clean, simple, and respectful. He took a deep breath. First day, he whispered to himself. Let's see how this goes. The building in front of him was towering, all glass and silver, with the words Crestridge Solutions etched across the doors in bold font. It wasn't just any company. It was one of the most rapidly growing logistics firms in the region. Marcus had always kept a low profile. He never needed to announce who he was. He preferred actions over words. He liked to observe, to learn, and to see how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching. As he stepped through the doors, the receptionist barely looked up. Name? She asked flatly, typing on her keyboard. Marcus Langford. First day. I was told to check. In with human resources. She paused, looked up, blinked once, clearly surprised, then forced a tight smile and pointed down the hall. Room 302. Manager will be with you shortly. Room 302 was a sleek glass-paneled conference room. Inside, a man in his mid-50s sat with his feet on the table, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up as Marcus walked in. You're late, the man muttered. Marcus glanced at the day. Clock on the wall. 8:59 a.m. His shift started at 9. Actually, I'm right on time. His voice was calm, steady, measured. The man finally looked up, eyes narrowing. You new hires always think punctuality is optional, huh? Then he chuckled to himself. Figures. Marcus didn't react. He knew that tone, that look. Connor, Briggs regional floor manager, a man who had been with the company for over 20 years, and a man who did not enjoy being challenged, especially by someone he'd already decided wasn't worth respecting. You're assigned to inventory prep. 3rd floor. Report to Luis, and don't slow the others down. He tossed a faded ID badge across the table. It landed near Marcus's feet. You'll be on probation, 3 days, no mistakes, got it? Marcus picked up the badge without a word, gave a polite nod, and left. Behind him, Connor scoffed loudly. These diversity. Hires get bolder every year. The warehouse was bustling. Workers in gray uniforms moved between shelves stacked sky-high with packages and materials. Forklifts beeped, radios crackled. Luis, a short man with kind eyes, greeted Marcus with a handshake. You're Marcus? Welcome. My man. Let me show you the ropes. Marcus smiled, grateful for the warmth in an otherwise cold morning. They got to work. Marcus didn't complain, didn't slow down, didn't ask for shortcuts. He listened, he learned, he adjusted. By lunch, he'd already organized 3 entire aisles by SKU number and streamlined the tagging process, something that normally took a team of 3. Luis raised an eyebrow. You sure you've never worked inventory before? Marcus chuckled softly. I've studied systems like this before. He didn't elaborate. Luis nodded, impressed. Meanwhile, back in the manager's office, Connor was watching the floor on the security monitor. Who does that guy think he is? He muttered, sipping coffee. All quiet, all polite. Acting like he's better than everyone, don't like it. His assistant, Jenna, peeked into the office. You mean Marcus? HR said he had great recommendations. Connor rolled his eyes. Yeah, all the right paperwork, but let's see how long he lasts. Then he smiled, a thin, mean little smile. Later that day, as Marcus passed Connor in the hallway, he offered a polite, "Good afternoon." Connor didn't reply, just stared at him like a fly on the wall. Marcus kept walking, but deep inside, he already understood exactly what kind of man Connor was. Still, he wasn't here to fight. Not yet. Cue slow fade-out music. Light tension begins building. Voiceover whisper, optional for cap-cut emphasis. They say you never get a second chance at a first impression, but sometimes the first impression tells you everything you need to know. The next morning, Marcus arrived 15 minutes early. He walked the halls quietly, observing the rhythm of the place, how people clocked in, who chatted, who avoided eye contact. He wasn't just taking in the company structure. He was absorbing the cultures and the cracks within it, Luis greeted him again with a warm smile. "Morning, Marcus. You sleep here or something?" Marcus grinned. "Just like to be early. It's a habit." They got to work. Marcus volunteered to help other departments when he finished his own tasks. He reorganized the barcode system for faster scanning. By 11 a.m., even Luis seemed stunned. "You're like a walking operations manual." But not everyone was impressed. Connor was watching from afar and fuming. "He's trying to show off," he muttered under his breath. "Trying to look better." Then the rest. His ego couldn't handle it. He called an impromptu meeting that afternoon, pulled Marcus into his office without warning. "You think you're better than everyone else?" he barked. "Helping out across departments? That's not your job." Marcus remained calm. "I thought initiative was encouraged here." Connor leaned forward. "No one asked you to be a hero. We don't need some know-it-all walking around acting like he runs the place." A pause, then a smirk. "You're on thin ice. Stay in your lane, or this won't end well for you." Outside the office, several employees had heard the raised voice. Sarah, a junior analyst, stood frozen at the copier, eyes wide. She had met Marcus only briefly, but something about him struck her as genuine. Now, hearing how he was being spoken to, it didn't sit right. Days passed. Connor made things harder. He reassigned Marcus to janitorial backup for 2 days, mopping floors, cleaning supply rooms, well outside his job description. "Let's see if you're still enthusiastic after cleaning toilets," he sneered. Marcus, to everyone's surprise, didn't flinch. He did the job with the same focus and precision, and, when asked by other workers why he wasn't upset, Marcus simply said, "Dignity doesn't come from the job you're assigned. It comes from how you carry it." That night, Sarah stayed late finishing some financial reports. As she walked past the storage area, she saw Marcus restocking cleaning supplies. "You shouldn't be doing that," she said, her voice low. Marcus looked up. "Doing what?" "This. They're taking advantage of you. It's wrong." Marcus offered a soft smile. "Sometimes you have to let people show you who they are, without stopping them." Sarah frowned. "But you shouldn't just take it." He nodded, then looked her in the eye. "You're right. I won't. Forever." The next morning, Connor filed an incident report on Marcus, claiming insubordination over a minor clerical error that Marcus didn't commit. Marcus was called into HR. The tone was icy. The questions pointed, but Marcus didn't defend himself aggressively. He let them speak. He answered calmly. He ended the meeting with a quiet, "I trust the company will make the right decision." As he walked out, he noticed Connor leaning against the wall with a smug grin. That evening, as Marcus left the building, he paused to look back. The company logo shone in white above the entrance. His reflection in the glass looked like just another worker. But inside, Marcus already knew he wasn't just another worker. He had come to watch, to listen, to understand. And now, he had everything he needed. Cue slow music swell, building tension. Voice-over emphasis. They thought he was just another hire, but they never bothered to ask what he was really here for. Marcus arrived early again the next day. He still smiled, still greeted people kindly, still put on his gloves and started helping with inventory before the shift even began. But something had shifted. His eyes, once calm and observant, now carried a quiet intensity. He was still composed, but something was brewing beneath the surface. Inside the manager's office, Connor leaned back in his chair, sipping bad coffee with a smirk on his face. Kid still showing up early. Must really need this job. Jenna, his assistant, shifted uncomfortably. Honestly, he's doing good work. Everyone says so. Connor scoffed. Doesn't matter. It's not about the work. It's about knowing your place. He said it so casually, so confidently, like the words were law. By mid-morning, the office buzzed with tension. Connor called for a random audit of the inventory, knowing full well it was Marcus who had been managing that section. He strutted across the warehouse floor like a king surveying his land, clipboard in hand. "What do we have here?" he barked loudly, drawing attention. "Some labels out of place, misfiled entries?" Luis approached nervously. Connor, everything was double-checked yesterday. Marcus, I didn't ask you, Luis. Connor snapped, then turned to Marcus, smiling like a shark. Care to explain these inconsistencies? Marcus looked at the clipboard calmly. Those entries were from last week, before I arrived. The timestamps show that. Connor's jaw tensed. So now you're blaming others for your mistakes? Marcus replied evenly. No, I'm correcting the record. The entire floor fell silent. Connor's face turned red. You're done, he growled. Pack your things. Everyone froze. Luis stammered. Wait, this isn't… Now, Connor barked. Marcus looked around. Dozens of eyes were watching. He reached down, calmly removed his gloves, and slowly handed them to Luis. Thank you for your kindness, Marcus said softly, then turned to Sarah, who had walked into the room mid-argument. He nodded gently at her. Then finally he faced Connor, and with eyes no longer calm, but unflinching. You've shown me everything I needed to see, and with that, he walked away. The room stayed silent for a long time. Sarah stepped forward, shaking. You can't do that. There's no proof he did anything wrong. Connor shrugged. He didn't fit in. That's all the proof I need. Sarah stared at him, disgusted. You just fired the best worker we've had in weeks. You're not a manager. You're a bully. Connor turned to her, his smile gone. Watch your tone, Sarah. She didn't respond, but she didn't back down either. That evening, Marcus sat alone in a quiet coffee shop. He stirred his drink slowly, lost in thought. He wasn't angry. He wasn't broken. He was calculating. Everything he needed, he had. Now seen firsthand, he picked up his phone. It's time, he said quietly. The voice on the other end responded. Understood, Mr. Langford. We'll prepare the board for Monday's meeting. Marcus smiled. Let's make sure everyone's in the room, especially Connor Briggs. Music swells, slightly cinematic. Voiceover whisper. When people think you're nobody, they speak without fear, they act without shame, and that's when the truth has its sharpest edge. Monday arrived. Connor woke up earlier than usual, shaved clean, put on his sharpest gray suit, and practiced his firm but charming smile in the mirror. Today was important. The company had been bought out recently by a larger conglomerate, and rumor had it, the new CEO would finally make his first visit to this regional branch. Connor, of course, planned to impress. He had even prepared a little speech in case the CEO asked for remarks from local leadership. He would mention his strong management style, his ability to maintain order, his commitment to discipline. What he wouldn't mention was Marcus, or the firing, or the silent tension running through the floor since Friday. At Crestridge headquarters, staff were buzzing. Connor walked in, chest puffed like a rooster. He greeted employees with a sudden new warmth. Morning, Sarah. You look sharp today. Sarah didn't respond, just nodded and kept walking. Luis gave a half-hearted wave. Connor approached Jenna. Make sure the conference room is ready, and get refreshments, only the premium stuff. This is a big day. An hour later, senior staff were gathered in the large glass meeting room. Connor stood near the front, rehearsing lines in his head. The director of operations entered first, then the CFO, then the regional VP, all greeted with polite handshakes. Connor kept glancing toward the door. Where was the CEO? Then, silence fell. The doors opened, and Marcus Langford walked in, wearing a tailored navy blue suit. Confident, calm, measured. Connor's mouth opened, but no words came. Sarah's eyes widened. Luis blinked like he was seeing a ghost, and then, the director of operations stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to formally introduce Mr. Marcus Langford, the newly appointed CEO of Langford Group, the parent company overseeing Crestridge and its subsidiaries. You could hear the oxygen leave the room. Connor staggered a step back, color draining from his face. No, that's not… He worked in inventory last week. Marcus turned toward him slowly, his voice calm, powerful. Yes, I did. Then he looked at the room. Because I wanted to understand what this company had become at the ground level. How people were treated when no titles were attached, when no one was watching. He paused. And what I found was deeply disappointing. Connor looked around, desperate. People avoided his eyes. He turned to the director. This is some kind of joke, right? I mean, he was mopping floors. Marcus looked him dead in the eye. Yes. And while I mopped, you watched, you judged, you demeaned. Not because of performance, not because of protocol, but because of prejudice. Connor's voice cracked. I didn't know. How could I have known? Exactly, Marcus said softly. You didn't care to know. Marcus looked across the staff, some ashamed, some shocked, some silently proud. This isn't just about me, it's about culture, about leadership, about decency. He let the silence stretch. Then, turning back to Connor, you fired me without cause, without evidence, without humanity. Connor opened, his mouth again, but Marcus raised a hand. You're not fired. Connor blinked in shock. You're being reassigned. Gasps rippled across the room. You'll remain on staff, under full monitoring. You'll attend weekly leadership training. On diversity, equity, and ethics, you'll report directly to Luis. Connor turned crimson. Luis looked like someone had just told him he was elected president. Sarah covered her mouth to hide her smile. Marcus stepped closer. You wanted to teach people their place, Connor. Now you'll learn yours. Music swells. Cinematic, like a quiet revolution just happened in one sentence. Voiceover whisper. Power doesn't come from yelling orders. It comes from how you treat people when you think they have none. The meeting was over, but no one moved. Connor sat in his chair like a statue. Eyes locked on the table, face pale, hands trembling slightly. Luis looked around in disbelief, trying to process what just happened. Sarah? She was stunned. But, in the best way possible. She slowly turned toward Marcus, her lips parting to speak, but for once, she was speechless. Marcus didn't stay long. He closed the meeting with a single sentence. Starting today, this company changes, not just from the top, but from the inside out. Then he walked out. No gloating, no dramatics, just presence. True, leadership didn't need to shout. Hours later, the company was buzzing. Whispers filled the halls. He was undercover. He's really the CEO. Did you see Connor's face? But it wasn't just gossip. There was a shift, a sense that maybe, just maybe, justice could be real. That actions had consequences. That respect was no longer optional. Sarah knocked gently on Marcus's new office door. It was still being set up. Boxes half unpacked, nameplate waiting to be hung. Do you have a moment? Marcus looked up and smiled. Of course, come in. She stepped inside, nervous. I wanted to say thank you. He tilted his head slightly. For what? For not staying silent. For showing us that someone can rise without tearing others down. Marcus gave a soft laugh. You did the same, Sarah. You spoke up when others didn't. She nodded, voice quieter now. I tried, but I didn't do enough. I saw what Connor was doing. I should have said something sooner. He stood and walked over. Sometimes silence is survival. I understand, then his voice firmed. But that ends here. Starting now, this is a place where people can speak and be heard. Meanwhile, Connor was escorted to a new workspace. No corner office, no leather chair, just a plain cubicle near the training rooms. He sat down heavily, staring at the HR packet in front of him. Mandatory diversity training, session 1. Recognizing implicit bias, he clenched his jaw. Then slowly, his eyes flicked across the room, landing on Luis, now in the manager's seat. Their eyes met. Luis gave him a nod, not smug, not cruel, just firm. Connor looked away. For the first time in decades, he wasn't at the top, and he didn't know what to do with that. Back upstairs, Marcus called in the HR director. I want an audit, he said. All terminations over the last 2 years, especially those involving minority employees. The HR rep blinked. Sir? That's a lot of... Marcus didn't blink. Then you'd better get started. That evening, Marcus sat alone in his office, city lights blinking outside the window. He thought about the janitor he'd eaten lunch with on day one, about the forklift driver who always smiled at him, about Sarah's voice shaking when she first stood up for him. These were the real people, the ones who mattered. He didn't need to change the company logo. He needed to change its soul. Music shifts into a softer tone, deep reflection, quiet power, voiceover whisper. Revenge makes you feel good for a moment, but justice? Justice changes everything forever. Part 6. A New Order. Begins opening music. Smooth, low strings blend with a soft beat, symbolizing the calm power of quiet change in motion. By Wednesday morning, the tone at Crestridge Solutions had transformed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was subtle but undeniable. People walked through the hallways differently, a little straighter, a little more cautiously. Whispers about Marcus no longer carried fear, but a cautious curiosity. They weren't afraid of him. They were afraid of what he represented. A man who had seen them, without titles, and remembered everything. Connor sat stiffly at his desk in the corner of the open workspace. Gone were the casual insults, the lazy smirks, the good old boys banter with upper management. He hadn't said much in 3 days, but the weight of his demotion, public and humiliating, hung over him like a fog. Every time someone walked by his cubicle, he flinched slightly. He was no longer the feared figure. He was the warning sign. Marcus, meanwhile, had called his first full leadership meeting. All department heads, HR, operations, finance, logistics, floor supervisors. Even Sarah, now temporarily assigned as a strategic advisor for workplace culture. They gathered in the same room where Connor once ruled with fake charm and hidden cruelty. But now, Marcus stood at the head of the table. No yelling, no lectures. Just quiet authority. I want to start by saying one thing, Marcus began, his voice steady. The past week has made one thing clear. Talent exists here, but trust does not. He looked around the room, eyes meeting each face without blinking. That changes now. If you treat people with dignity, regardless of their role, appearance, or background, you will thrive here. He paused. But if you abuse your position even subtly, I will know. Silence. Then a breath. He softened his tone. This company was built to serve, not just clients, but each other. If we do this right, we rebuild not just our image, but our soul. After the meeting, Sarah pulled Marcus aside. You didn't have to bring me in today. He smiled. No. But I saw how you acted when it counted. That's leadership. I don't care what your title says. She looked down, blushing. Slightly. I'm not sure I'm ready for all this. You weren't ready last week either, Marcus replied. But you still stood up. Meanwhile, back in HR, the audit began. Files stacked high. Dozens of termination reports, complaints, performance reviews, and a disturbing pattern. Minority. Workers were being disciplined more frequently and promoted far less often. Marcus looked through the data quietly. His jaw tightened. He picked up the phone. Bring me a report of all promotions and demotions over the last 3 years. That night, Connor received an email. Subject, Leadership Training Feedback. Week 1. He clicked. It was from the diversity coach. Mr. Briggs, your participation has been noted as passive, resistant, and unengaged. If this continues, further disciplinary action may be required. Connor slammed the laptop shut. He leaned back, stared at the ceiling, and for the first time in decades, he felt powerless. Upstairs, Marcus stood by the window again, watching the lights of the city. This wasn't revenge, this was reform. He didn't want Connor to suffer. He wanted him to learn. But if he refused, then Marcus would make the hard choice, without hesitation, because leadership meant protecting the people who had no voice. Soft music fades into something deeper, a heartbeat rhythm returning. Voiceover whisper. When you rebuild from ashes, you don't just put things Back, you build them better, stronger, wiser. Thursday morning arrived with an unusual silence. The building felt still, the kind of stillness that comes not from emptiness, but from reflection. After days of quiet change, rumors, and reshuffling, today was the day everyone knew something. More was coming. Marcus arrived wearing a dark gray suit, clean, sharp, understated, not flashy, not demanding attention, but commanding it anyway. He didn't walk like a man seeking approval. He walked like a man with purpose. In his hands was a single black folder, and inside, Connor's full record. Meanwhile, Connor was trying, really trying, to play along. He arrived early, greeted co-workers he never used to speak to. He even helped Jenna organize supplies, but everyone could tell. It wasn't sincere, it was desperate. At 10:20 a.m., Marcus sent out a company-wide email. Subject, Open Forum, Leadership Transparency. All staff are invited to conference room. At 11:02 a.m., come prepared to listen, speak, or ask. No hierarchy, just honesty. ML. The buzz started immediately. He's inviting everyone. What's this about? Even the warehouse crew? Yes, especially them. The room filled faster than anyone expected. Engineers sat beside janitors, receptionists beside project managers, people who had never spoken to each other before. Now shoulder to shoulder, waiting. Marcus entered last. He placed the black folder on the table and looked around. Today isn't about policies, he began. It's about people. He spoke plainly, about what he saw his first week, about silent cruelties, microaggressions, unearned power, and earned pain. He spoke about Connor, without naming, but with clarity. Then he opened the floor. Silence. Then, a voice from the back. Luis. I worked here 7 years. Never got invited to a leadership meeting until this week. Nods, then Sarah. I was told I needed to toughen up when I reported workplace bias. More nods. Then a woman from maintenance. People used to pretend I didn't exist. Now they say good morning. You think that's normal? Marcus listened. To everyone. He didn't interrupt, didn't correct. He let their stories breathe. And the room changed, not because he spoke well, but because he listened fully, and then Connor stood up. Slowly, every eye turned to him, his voice cracked. I thought I knew how to lead. I thought I was doing what was right. But I see now. I was protecting power, not people. A long pause. He looked at Marcus. You didn't fire me, you let me see myself. He lowered his gaze. That's harder than being fired. Marcus nodded, not in triumph, but in respect. It's what you do next that matters now. The meeting ended not with applause, but with something rarer, understanding. People stayed behind, talking, laughing, bridging gaps. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. That night, Marcus walked alone through the warehouse. He passed by the shelves, the same ones he'd labeled and sorted. He touched one quietly, like a soldier revisiting a battlefield. Then, in the break room, he saw something taped to the fridge. A quote, typed, unattributed. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. He smiled. Someone understood. Music fades gently to a thoughtful close. Voiceover whisper. You don't change the world by shouting louder. You change it by listening when no one else does. 1 week after the open forum, everything felt different. Not because of rules, not because of fear, but because something real had started. People held doors for each other. Team leads started asking for input, not just assigning blame. New ideas were surfacing from voices that had once gone unheard. There was light. And Marcus? He was right in the middle of it, not watching from above, walking among them. That morning, Marcus dropped by the logistics floor unannounced. He stood beside the forklift driver and asked questions about the system. Real questions. He laughed with the crew, ate lunch with the analysts, checked the bathrooms for accessibility improvements. Listened to a front desk receptionist vent about outdated scheduling. He showed up. Meanwhile, HR released the first workplace equity report in company history. Marcus had pushed for full transparency. The numbers were raw, too raw, disparities in pay, promotions, recognition. But instead of burying them, Marcus printed the report, bound it, and mailed a copy to every single employee with a sticky note attached. It's not about who caused it, it's about who's willing to fix it. ML. Later that week, Sarah walked into Marcus's office holding 2 cups of coffee. Peace offering, she smiled. And apology for doubting myself last week. Marcus chuckled. You were never the problem, the system just kept you quiet. She sat. It's strange. I used to think fairness was just a myth, something companies printed on posters, but now, she looked at him. Now I see it in motion. Elsewhere in the building, Connor quietly started his first mentorship session. He wasn't leading. He was listening. Across from him sat Malik, a soft-spoken young intern who had considered quitting last month after a humiliating encounter. Now, Connor was asking, "What would you change if you were in my seat 5 years ago?" Malik blinked, then answered honestly, "And Connor?" He wrote it down. Every word. By Friday afternoon, Marcus called a small group into the main conference room, the same room where Connor once dismissed him like dirt. Present were Sarah, Luis, Jenna, Malik, and 2 warehouse workers, Mario and Anna, all. From different levels, different departments, different worlds. Marcus stood before them with a question. What does a future-proof company look like to you? At first, there was hesitation. Then, ideas came. Transparency tools. Anonymous. Reporting that actually works. Bias training built into onboarding. Career tracks that don't depend on who you know. Marcus listened, wrote everything down, and then he handed out envelopes. Each one had the same message. Congratulations. You are now part of the Langford Leadership Circle, effective immediately. Mouths dropped open. Mario looked at Sarah. I mop floors. Marcus smiled. You lead by example, that's more than most managers ever do. Across the company, something rippled. A janitor becoming a policy advisor. A front desk assistant designing onboarding experience. A former intern rewriting training documents. Not because of diversity quotas, but because Marcus understood greatness is everywhere if you're willing to see it. Music swells, hopeful, almost cinematic. Voiceover whisper. They saw him as less because of how he looked, but he became more because of how he saw them. It was Marcus's 3rd week as CEO. The building now buzzed with purpose, not fear. People collaborated across floors, ate lunch together, and, most surprisingly, began volunteering for weekend community projects Marcus had quietly launched. He called it Local Roots, a company-wide initiative to give back to the neighborhoods many of them had once come from, or overlooked. And the first location? Marcus's old neighborhood. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Several employees, including Sarah, Luis, Jenna, and even Connor, stepped off a company shuttle into the heart of a rundown but resilient community. Kids played ball. In cracked streets, grandmothers swept porches. Corner stores stood with broken neon signs. Marcus stood waiting at the curb, sleeves rolled up, handing out gloves and paintbrushes. Welcome to where I learned what real work looks like. As the team got to work, repainting fences, cleaning sidewalks, building a small community garden, laughter replaced awkward silence. Connor worked beside Malik, sweating in the sun, not asking for credit. Sarah led a mural project with local teens. Luis fixed a broken community mailbox. And Marcus? He walked the streets like someone who'd never left. Because in his heart, he hadn't. Later that day, they gathered at the local rec center. Children handed out lemonade in paper cups. Elders came to shake hands. Even the mayor dropped by to thank the company. Marcus stood by the basketball court where he used to play barefoot. He looked around, at his co-workers, his community, his home. Then he asked everyone to gather for one final moment. I came. Here not just to clean up walls, he began, but to remind us all of something. Power is not measured by position. It's measured by how many people you lift up with you. He pointed to the garden. That wasn't planted by the board. That was planted by you. He gestured to the new mural, bright with hope, history, and pride. That art, that's the soul of this company now. Not the profits, not the titles. This. Then he turned to Connor. For the first time, truly human. No anger, no superiority. Just honesty. You tried to bury me, Marcus said quietly, but all you did was water the ground I grew from. Connor's throat tightened. He swallowed hard, then whispered, "Thank you for not returning what I gave." Marcus nodded. Revenge is easy. Mercy is harder. But change? He looked at the crowd. Change is what makes the pain worth it. That night, Marcus walked back alone to the court. He looked up at the sky, hands in his pockets. From the distance, a young boy's voice echoed, "Hey, Mr. CEO, you gonna shoot some hoops with us?" Marcus turned, smiled, and jogged toward the game. Music swells, joyful, open, bright. A deep exhale after a long battle. Voiceover whisper. They dismissed him because of his skin. They fired him because of their fear. But he rose because he knew who he was before they ever did. Monday morning. Back at Crestridge headquarters, the elevator doors opened, and Marcus stepped inside. He nodded to a young man in a delivery uniform beside him, smiled, and said, "Floor 7?" The man nodded shyly. As the doors closed, the young man turned. I saw you on the news. You're the CEO, right?" Marcus gave a small smile. "Sometimes. Today I'm just another guy going to work." The man chuckled. "You make it look different. In a good way." The building had changed. Subtle things. The receptionist now greeted everyone with kindness, not just suits. Connor passed by quietly, nodded to people with genuine eye contact. New posters lined the halls. Not slogans, but commitments. Written by employees. Signed by leadership, one read. "We don't rise by pulling others down." Another. "Justice doesn't start at the top, it starts in the hallway." In the cafeteria, Sarah was leading a new mentorship group. Luis had started his own leadership training for entry-level workers. Even Jenna had pitched a new onboarding redesign, based on empathy and transparency. Marcus walked through it all quietly. He didn't need applause because the real reward was watching others rise. Later that afternoon, Marcus stood before a group of new hires, fresh faces, different backgrounds, nervous energy. He cleared his throat and said, "You may hear a lot about what this company was, but I want you to remember what it can be. Because who you are right now might just be the reason someone else gets to rise tomorrow." He paused, then added, "You're not just workers. You're future leaders. Don't let anyone tell you different." That night, as the building emptied, Marcus remained behind. His office light glowed alone. He walked to the window, looking over the city. Tall, bright, messy, beautiful. He pulled a leather journal from his drawer, the one he'd been keeping. Since his first day undercover, he opened to the final page and wrote, "They called me nobody. They spoke to me like I didn't matter. They fired me to protect their comfort, but I didn't come for power. I came for justice. And now, we begin again. ML." He closed the journal, locked the drawer, then turned off the light and walked away. Final music swells, triumphant. Emotional but quiet. A story complete. Voiceover whisper, closing line. The man they fired became the man they followed, because the truth always finds its way back to power. Fade out.